what's going on, everyone? This is Nick. If you're new here, I'm a guitarist based in Brooklyn, New York, and today I'm going to be talking to you about everything you need for your home studio. So if there's one good thing that the coronavirus pandemic really brought, was the kind of awareness for home studios. Because most of us were stuck at home, we had to kind of figure out a way to work. With live music not happening, we had to still figure out how to make music even though we couldn't be next to people, and home studios were the obvious answer. Now that's one of the greatest things about being a 21st century musician, is the affordability of having a home studio. A lot of people can make a record on just a few $100s, maybe even less if you kind of buy used and stuff like that. And there's never been a point in time where this kind of stuff has been this affordable and so compact. So basically today I'm going to kind of go over some of the essential gear that I think you need and kind of go over some of the options. If you're interested in purchasing any of the items that I mentioned, I'm going to have them all with links in the description. The links down there from reverb.com, and they're affiliate links, meaning I'll get a small percentage of whatever you buy from there at no further cost to you. So it's kind of a way to support the channel while also kind of supporting your gas. Gear acquiring syndrome. But besides the fact that they're affiliate links, I personally buy most of my gear on reverb.com. I am a huge proponent of buying used, and that's how I'm able to afford basically all the stuff I have. I believe half of the stuff that I own was either bought through discounts working in a music store or through Reverb. And I also sell on there as well. Reverb is a great place for musicians. It's always reliable, and it's a way to get your stuff a lot cheaper and in great condition. Now I just want to point out that you don't need all this gear to start making music. Just go and make some music. If you make some music and you want to send it to me for like a review, go check out my Instagram at njrousmusic, and I'll gladly check out your music and I'll give you some feedback on it. So anyway, let's dive into it. So one of the first things you'll need, and potentially one of the only things you'll need, is an audio interface. Although there is a scenario where you might not need it. So an audio interface has a few things. One, it has a preamp. Basically, it provides volume and power to the microphone that you're using. Or you can plug in a guitar directly into it and it'll take the signal and amplify it. The same way an amplifier does, but instead of going out to a speaker, what the interface does is that it takes your analog sound and it has what's called an analog to digital converter. Essentially, it takes your cool audio sound and it turns it into a bunch of nerd stuff like 101010. And then it basically puts it into the computer. And then there's what's called a digital to analog converter, which essentially takes your ones and zeros and puts them back into the audio thing so you can listen back to them. So for example, you record your guitar, basically it goes as an analog sound into the interface, then the interface converts it to a language that the computer can understand. It puts it into a DAW or a DW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation. We'll get into those in a second. And then it takes it from the digital, spits it back into analog, and then you have your playback sound. The time that you maybe wouldn't need it is if, one, you're gonna work solely on a Midi USB keyboard, or if you're using a USB microphone. But you can't really produce full songs using just a USB. Actually, no, that's not true. Yeah, you can probably do that. But anyway, so the interface that I would most highly recommend is the Focusrite Scarlett, and I have a Focusrite Scarlett 18i20, which you probably can't see there. That is an 8-channel interface, which means it has 8 different mic preamps, so I can have 8 mics at the same time. If you're a small home studio and you're not recording drums and you're not recording like any live groups, you probably don't need that. The Focusrite Scarlett series has a bunch of different options. So the entry model would be the Solo, which basically means you can only plug in and record one thing at a time. That's about $120. It's a really great entry point, and you can do a lot with that with one microphone, or you can plug in a guitar or a bass or anything that can be plugged in. Now, I would probably recommend you would get a 2-channel interface like the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Now the 2i2 is $170, but you could record 2 things at a time. So for example, if you're a guitar player and a singer, you can plug your guitar directly into one channel and you can put your microphone and sing into the other channel and get a really nice sound. There's a bunch of different options. You can, for example, get stereo microphones and you could experiment with a lot of different sounds. So I'd recommend having at least 2 in the minimum. Then next on the ladder, you would have the Focusrite 18i8, which has 4 different mic channel preamps, which kind of gives you a lot more options. If you wanted to record like a live trio, you can have drum overheads in the first 2 channels, then a guitar and a bass in the other channel. And you can have your nice trio sound and get a pretty decent sounding thing. And if you want to know more about that, I have a video on how to record trio on a budget that might help you out. Anyway, the Focusrite 18i8 is a bit more expensive. That one is $420. That being said, you can find all of these on Reverb for a lot cheaper. So definitely check that out. A few other options are the SSL2 interface, which is $220. I would say that's a slight upgrade from the Focusrite 2i2. SSL is a company that made a lot of really nice analog consoles, and they made an interface with a little 4K button that basically simulates an analog preamp. Now I've heard really good things about it, and I've heard people say that these are great interfaces. So if you have some extra bread to spend and you want to get a little better of an interface, that might be something to look at. And the last option I'd say is the Apollo Twin MK2 Duo. This one is pretty pricey. It's $800. That might be my next home studio purchase. But basically it has these two little processing chips inside of it, and essentially acts as a processor so you can run plugins off of it. One thing that's really cool is it has what's called unison technology, which means that you can use plugins on the signal going in. So why would you want to use that? Well, for example, if you wanted to pretend you're going through a Neve analog console, you could do that. However, if this is your first studio interface and you don't really know much about the home studio environment, I would strongly recommend you don't buy this interface, because you probably don't know what half of this means and you might not be able to use it to its full potential. Anyway, let's move on to MIDI keyboards. The MIDI keyboards are great because not only can you get piano sounds, but through your DAW, you can actually get other instruments. You can get string instruments, you get brass instruments, you can really get anything, and you can sample your own instruments if you know how to do that. So this is the MIDI keyboard that I use. It's M Audio Keystation 49. For my purposes, because I'm not like a concert pianist, I kind of just like noodle and I play fifths in the left hand and like random stuff in the right hand. 49 keys is plenty for me. The 49 key version is $120. It really depends on what you want to do with it. Another cool option is the Arturia KeyStep 37, which is a slightly smaller keyboard because it has 37 keys, but this one has a sequencer and an arpeggiator and all these cool things, meaning you can like play a chord and it'll like play all the notes of the chord. It'll arpeggiate the chord. That one retails for about $170. It really piqued my interest, so I'm kind of looking into getting that one as well. Another option is the Novation Launch Key 49. That one retails for $220, and that one actually has some pads on it, so you can play some like little percussion or drum things on it, which you can also do on a regular MIDI keyboard, but you're doing it on keys rather than pads, so the pads are kind of nice. If you're not really a pianist and you're looking to kind of just get like some small sample instruments going on, you might want to look into getting a small MIDI keyboard. So the Akai MPK Mini retails for about $120, and another option is the Arturia Mini LED MK2, which retails for about $110. So if you're into like working at coffee shops and you want a really portable setup, you can take your laptop, your MIDI keyboard, and your headphones, and you can kind of like post up and work there, at least when lockdowns ease up. I don't know where you are in the world. But anyway, moving on, now we get to headphones. And I feel like headphones is a bigger topic. Now, there's a bunch of different variety of headphones, and there's a bunch of different types. If you're gonna do a lot of home recording, I would recommend getting what's called closed-back headphones. An example of closed-back headphones would be these Audio-Technica M50Xs. And basically what closed-back means is that when you put them on, they won't bleed to someone else. You know how like if you're like on a bus or a plane and someone's playing music really loud, you can still hear them? Basically, this kind of minimalizes that. And it's great for the home studio environment, especially if you're recording stuff, so that way the bleed from whatever you're listening to doesn't get picked up in the microphone, which is a pretty common problem. Now, these guys actually come in a bunch of different varieties. I really like this one because it has a detachable cable, so if your cable breaks, you can just get a new cable rather than get a new headphone. These are the M50Xs, but I think they also have the M30s, if I'm correct. They also have the M40s, and they have the M20s, and the M20s only go for $50. So if you really need a budget pair of headphones, you can use that. You could also use some Apple earbuds or whatever like Skull Candy headphones you want. Those might not sound the best, but they'll still work, and you can still get some really nice songs done. You can get some really nice work done. Another option is the Bayer Dynamic DT770, which are a closed-back headphone that retail for about $160. I actually use the DT990s, which are open back, meaning it allows the sound to escape, and it's a lot better for mixing music because you have a more accurate representation of the sound, and it provides sort of like a little better environment for a mixing scenario. But if you're not doing a lot of mixing, you don't really need to get the open back headphones. And finally, if you want like a really cool option, Avantone Pro M1 is a new headphone that just came out that looks really cool, and it actually has some different EQ settings. Those retail for about $200, and they're really intriguing, also on my list. So then we get to speakers, and as you see back here, I have my Yamaha HS7s behind me. Now, I wouldn't really recommend you getting a pair of decent speakers at the beginning, because in order to have good sounds through speakers, you kind of need some room treatment, which can kind of get pretty expensive. You don't necessarily need them, but if you really want some speakers, one thing I would recommend is the Mackie multimedia monitors. They have them in a bunch of different sizes, and they're probably one of the cheapest studio monitors I've seen. The pair of 5-inch speakers are $200, and the pair of 3-inch speakers are $100. Now, the bigger the size of the speaker, the more bass response you're gonna get, and the more definition you're gonna get. So keep that in mind. With the 3-inch speaker, you're not really gonna get a lot of bass response. The same way, if you're playing out of laptop speakers, you're not gonna get like a really strong bass. The number of the inches basically refers to the diameter of the bottom speaker, which is the woofer, and basically the bigger speaker you get, the bigger the bass. Another pretty affordable pair is the Kali Audio LP6, and those go for about $150 each. If I heard the story correctly, it's two guys from JBL who decided we're gonna make our own company and we're gonna make things better and we're gonna make things more affordable. And I've heard really great things about it. Those go for $150 each or $300 for the pair, which is pretty affordable. These Yamaha HS7s behind me were $320 each or $640 for the pair. I got them on discount because I was working in a music store. I don't know if I could have justified that expense to get these monitors. I probably would have gone for the Kalis. And then finally we get some microphones. So I actually have a blog post in the description on microphones. This is from my website, Tearing Out Recordings, which is a production business that my buddy Sean and I run. We offer production, mixing, and mastering and stuff like that. In that blog, there's like a little post that talks about the 3 types of microphones. So if you're interested in learning more about what kind of microphone would suit you the best, check out that article. And now I'm just gonna kind of go over some affordable options. At the end of the day, no matter what microphone you have, in my opinion, it's the positioning of the microphone and how you're using it that's gonna determine how good of a sound it is. So my biggest recommendation, no matter what you can afford, is to experiment. Is to try out different things. So the tried and true classic is the Shure SM57. Now I still use a Shure SM57 on the guitar amp and it sounds great. They're really great utility mics. They can really be used for anything. If you check out the YouTube channel Recording Studio Loser, he has a video where he records a whole song only using a Shure SM57. So check that out if you want to see how good it is and how you can use it. Another option is the Audio Technica AT2020, which is a really great beginner mic. This is a large diaphragm condenser mic, which also sounds great in a bunch of sources. That one retails for about $100. Another option would be the MXL 990, which I actually got on shopgoodwill.com for $30. You can find them a lot cheaper on Reverb as well. And these are really great microphones to mod. So if you're handy like that and you know how to solder, you can get a new capsule and you can basically turn this $30 microphone into a $3,000 Neumann microphone for a total of like $100 if you know how to solder and you have all the equipment already. So that's a cool option. And finally, if you want a pair of mics because, for example, you're a piano player or you're a drummer and want some overheads, these mics, the Rode M5, are great. They're $200 for the pair and they sound amazing. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but if you don't want to get an audio interface but you still want a microphone, you can get the Blue Snowball USB mic for about $50. Those are just USB, so you can plug them directly into a computer and they will work. You can produce the whole song if you have all the instruments you need. Finally, the next option would be a pop filter. It looks like this. And basically what that does is it takes away the sibilance, which is basically a kind of sound in your voice. So basically it reduces that and it kind of just gives you like a nicer sound because you don't have to hear every time I say. Then you're going to want a mic stand if you're going to use a microphone. So mic stands come in a bunch of different varieties. There's the tripod stand, which is the one I usually recommend and the one I use the most in the home studio because they're really versatile and they can get kind of anywhere. There's the round based mic stand, which is what you see in a live setting. I don't really recommend that as much because you're kind of just like limited to one place and you can't really get anywhere. And then there's something like a desktop stand, which is what I use and I just picked up. Basically, they're the same thing as a tripod stand, but a lot shorter, and they usually have like a sturdier base. And they're good for like podcasting and stuff like that. But if you're recording vocals and you just want to have something like posted on your desk all the time, that works great. Finally, you're going to want some XLR cables. Now, I'm not really going to go into too much detail about like which XLR cables to buy. Mogami is a really reputable brand if you want like a really bougie cable, but you can go to Guitar Center and get a live wire cable for like $10 or whatever. And then finally, if you're going to be playing guitar and you're going to just be recording directly into the interface and you don't want to buy a microphone, it might be in your best interest to get a guitar amp sim. If you check out the website NeuroDSP, this is not sponsored by the way, they have a lot of really great amp sims designed by a bunch of different guitar players, and all the guitar players are really great, so I definitely go check that out. And it has a lot of customizable sounds, and you can get pretty close. I A/B'd it against my Fender Deluxe Reverb with microphones, and I was like, this sounds pretty similar, but the fact that I already have microphones and a Fender Deluxe Reverb made me think maybe I don't need to buy this plugin, but it can come in handy. And finally, we have the digital audio workstation. Now, I mainly use Logic Pro X and Pro Tools. Logic Pro X is about $200, Pro Tools is about $600, but I got the education discount for about $300. And then you have something like Ableton, which is also a really great, powerful thing for doing like live loops and stuff like that. I'm not super comfortable in Ableton, although I should be, but I do have it because I worked at a music store and I got it for free actually. But some really affordable options are like GarageBand or Audacity. Those are free options. GarageBand is only available on Mac, and actually if you want to upgrade later, Logic Pro X has a really similar interface to GarageBand, so if you learn GarageBand really well, those skills will translate over to Logic. So that's about all that you need for the home studio. So that's about all I have for you today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Again, if you want to purchase any of them, there's links in the description for all of that. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.